Letting go is perhaps one of the most difficult things we can do, yet it is also one of the most transformative. In a world that constantly encourages us to hold on tightly to our beliefs, our possessions, our plans, our identities, we rarely consider the power in releasing, in surrendering. To let go is not to give up. It is not an admission of defeat. It is an act of profound trust, a recognition that not everything is meant to be controlled or held on to forever. When we hold on too tightly, we become rigid. We become afraid of change, afraid of uncertainty. Our minds create stories about what might happen if we let go, what we might lose, what might slip through our fingers. We imagine that by grasping tightly, we are somehow securing ourselves, preventing the unknown from overwhelming us. But in reality, this grip only leads to tension, to stress, and to a deep sense of dissatisfaction. We become prisoners of our own attachment, locked into patterns that no longer serve us. The more we hold on, the more we resist the natural flow of life, and the more we find ourselves stuck in a cycle of anxiety and frustration. When we let go, however, we open ourselves up to the possibility of something new. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning our goals or abandoning ourselves. It means releasing the need to control every outcome. It means giving ourselves permission to experience life without the pressure of expectations, without the constant need to dictate how things should unfold. By releasing our attachment to outcomes, we create space for life to surprise us, to show us things we never would have considered on our own. The fear of the unknown gives way to a sense of possibility, a sense of freedom. Letting go also means releasing our attachment to the past, the mistakes, the regrets, the things we wish we had done differently. So much of our energy is spent reliving what has already occurred, clinging to memories that no longer serve us. But in order to move forward, we must release these attachments. We must learn to accept what is, not what was, and trust that the future holds its own potential, separate from the baggage we carry. It is through letting go that we discover the true power of freedom. It is in surrendering our need for certainty, in trusting the unfolding of life, that we find the peace we have been seeking all along. Letting go does not leave us empty, it leaves us open. Open to the flow of life, open to the present moment, open to the beauty of simply being. The mind is a powerful force, shaping our perception of reality and guiding our action. Yet, it is also the very tool that creates the traps we find ourselves caught in. The mind has a tendency to construct narratives, to create stories that dictate how we see ourselves, others, and the world around us. These stories often come from a place of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. The mind's constant chatter, its endless thoughts, can feel like an insurmountable barrier to peace and clarity. But here lies the paradox. The mind that creates these traps is also the mind that can free us from them. The trap begins when we identify with our thoughts. We think we are our thoughts, that we are the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we deserve, and what is possible. We believe that the narrative in our minds is reality, that it represents the truth about ourselves and the world, and so we get stuck in these stories. We dwell on past mistakes. We worry about the future. We become attached to the idea of who we think we should be. The mind can become like a maze. Once we're in it, it's hard to see the way out. But the key to liberation is recognizing that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness behind them. When we stop identifying with the mind's constant stream of thoughts, we begin to see the traps for what they are, illusions. These mental constructs are not truths, but projections of our own fears and desires. The moment we stop believing in them, we create space for something deeper to emerge. We become aware of the present moment, of what is actually happening around us, rather than being consumed by the noise of our inner dialogue. This is where true freedom lies, not in controlling or silencing the mind, but in stepping back and observing it. We can witness our thoughts without becoming entangled in them. By shifting our perspective, we break free from the grip of the mind and its traps. The mind is not inherently bad, it is simply a tool, one that can be used skillfully or be allowed to run wild. When we learn to observe without judgment, when we recognize that we are not defined by our thoughts, we free ourselves from the traps they create. It's in this awareness that we find the space to breathe, to be and to live in alignment with the flow of life, not bound by the limits of our mental stories. Truth, freedom does not lie in external circumstances or in the things we acquire. It lies in the ability to be fully present, to experience life as it is, without attachment to the past or anxiety about the future. Most of us are so caught up in the pursuit of what's next that we overlook the richness of the present moment. We live in a constant state of striving, hoping that once we reach the next goal, we will finally feel content, at peace, or free. But the truth is that these future milestones never bring lasting satisfaction. The mind constantly shifts the goalposts, and once we achieve one thing, we find ourselves reaching for the next. Freedom comes when we stop seeking it in the future, in the next achievement, the next relationship, or the next success. It comes when we realize that freedom is already here in the present moment, if we allow ourselves to truly experience it. The problem is that we are so often consumed with thinking about what could be, what should be, or what has already passed, that we miss the simple, profound reality of what is. The freedom we seek is found in the acceptance of what is happening right now. This doesn't mean passively resigning ourselves to circumstances, but rather embracing the present with openness and curiosity, without trying to manipulate it or control it. When we become present, we step outside of the constant pressure to do and allow ourselves simply to be. This shift in perspective changes everything. It allows us to see life not as a series of tasks to complete or problems to solve, but as a continuous, unfolding experience to be lived. In this state of being, we become attuned to the deeper currents of life, to the natural flow that guides us. And we discover that there is no need to force anything. There is a peacefulness in surrendering to the moment, in letting go of the need to constantly chase after something more. This presence is not a state of inaction, but of clarity and understanding. It is the recognition that the true essence of freedom lies not in striving, but in accepting the world as it is and finding peace within it. When we stop running, when we stop trying to control, we begin to understand that freedom isn't something to achieve, it is something to realize in the here and now. And it is in this realization that we finally experience the true liberation we've been searching for. The illusions of control, by the constant striving, by the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we must do to find fulfillment. But freedom comes when we step outside of these constructs, when we let go of our need to control and simply allow life to unfold as it will. It comes when we stop fighting against the flow, and start living in harmony with it. True freedom is found not in doing more, but in being more, present, open, and accepting of what is. It is in recognizing that life, with all its uncertainties, holds an inherent wisdom that we can trust. The moment we stop believing the mind's stories and start observing them, we create space for the deeper truths of existence to reveal themselves. In that space, we discover that the trap was never real. It was only a mental construct. By surrendering to the present, by letting go of our rigid attachments, we free ourselves to experience life fully, without fear or resistance. So I encourage you to not fall for the trap. Let go of the illusion that you must control or strive. Release the stories that bind you to past regrets or future anxieties. Embrace the flow of life as it is, and in doing so, step into the freedom that has always been yours. The trap only exists if you choose to see it, and once you let go, you are free to experience the profound mystery and beauty of life in all its forms. I invite you to pause for a moment and reflect. Reflect on the moments in your life when you've finally escaped the feeling of being lost. Today, I want to talk to you about that very trap, the one that keeps us tethered to a false notion of what life should be. A trap built on the idea that we need to control, to manipulate, to force life into a shape that pleases us. But what if the very thing we're trying to control is the thing that will set us free? What if instead of striving, we simply allowed ourselves to be? In the next few minutes, let's explore the illusion that keeps us stuck and discover how, by letting go, we can finally break free. Because the truth is, the trap is not real. It's a story we've been told, and one that we have been conditioned to believe. But today, I'm here to help you see through it. We live in a world that constantly reinforces the idea that control is necessary for success. We are taught from a young age that if we can manage every detail, plan every step, and predict every outcome, we can bend life to our will. Control becomes the golden standard of accomplishment, and those who appear to have it are often held up as models to emulate. But here's the catch. Control is nothing more than an illusion. When we think we are controlling something, we are often just attempting to impose our expectations on a reality that has already begun unfolding. There is an inherent unpredictability to life that we simply cannot deny. And yet we cling to the idea that through sheer effort and will, we can alter the course of events. But the reality is that life cannot be manipulated like a puppet on strings. In truth, all our attempts at control are rooted in fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of not getting what we want, fear of failure. And the more we try to control, the more we bind ourselves to these fears. The illusion of control plays out in countless areas of our lives. From the way we try to control our relationships, to the way we meticulously plan our careers, to the way we attempt to control how others perceive us. In every case, we are not allowing life to be what it is. Instead, we are working against the natural flow, as though we know better than the forces that shape the world in the first place. The more we push against the current, the more we exhaust ourselves. It's as if we are trying to control the wind, believing that our strength will dictate its direction. What we fail to realize is that the very nature of control is rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of how life operates. Life is fluid, it is dynamic, and it is constantly changing. It does not bend to our will. It moves according to principles far grander and more intricate than any individual can grasp. When we mistakenly believe we have control, we isolate ourselves from the deeper reality of existence. We forget that the beauty of life lies in its unpredictability, in its ability to surprise us, to change, to flow with or against us in ways we cannot anticipate. In trying to control, we close ourselves off to the fullness of life as it is, and in doing so, we trap ourselves in an endless cycle of effort, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. We are constantly told that we must strive, that success requires relentless effort, and that the more we push, the more we will achieve. This belief becomes ingrained in our psyche from a young age. It is the idea that if we don't constantly work towards something, if we aren't always busy, then we are somehow falling behind. It's as if life itself is a race, and the only way to stay ahead is through perpetual striving. But this is where the trap lies. Striving in this sense isn't just about achieving goals. It's a mindset that keeps us locked in a cycle of perpetual motion, never truly resting or allowing things to unfold naturally. We become obsessed with progress, with moving forward, with the idea that we must always be doing in order to be valuable, to be worthy of success, happiness, or even rest. We measure our worth by our productivity, and so the more we achieve, the more we feel the need to do. But what we fail to recognize is that this constant striving often pulls us further away from what we truly need: peace, balance, and presence in the moment. In our quest to achieve, we neglect to consider that some of the most profound experiences in life come when we stop striving altogether. The moments of true insight, connection, and fulfillment often arrive when we least expect them, when we are not forcing them into existence. This doesn't mean we shouldn't set goals or pursue our passions. It means we must shift our relationship with effort. We must ask ourselves, what is the cost of constant striving? What do we lose in the process? When we are so fixated on the destination, we miss the richness of the journey itself. The trap of striving is not just about work or ambition. It extends into every area of our lives. We strive for better relationships, better health, better recognition, all while failing to realize that the very act of striving for these things often creates a distance between us and the life we seek. We become so focused on the ideal version of ourselves, our lives, or our circumstances that we fail to appreciate the imperfect beauty of the present. By constantly pushing forward, we forget to look around, to see where we are, and to understand that there is something deeply valuable in simply being with what is. Life unfolds in ways we cannot predict or control, and yet we often insist on structuring it to fit our narrow vision. From the moment we wake, we begin imposing our expectations on how our days should unfold, how our relationships should look, and how we should feel. But the truth is, life has a flow that cannot be bent by our rigid desires or plans. This flow is not a chaotic force, nor is it something to be feared. It is the natural rhythm of existence, a rhythm that is far more intelligent and creative than any of our efforts to control it. To live in harmony with life's flow means allowing things to unfold as they are meant to, rather than forcing them into the shape we think they should take. This doesn't mean giving up responsibility or relinquishing effort altogether. Rather, it's about recognizing that in any given moment, there is an inherent order that we may not immediately understand, but one that is always at play. Life has a way of working things out, even in situations that seem uncertain or unclear. When we resist the flow, when we push against the current, we end up exhausted and frustrated, often more deeply entrenched in our struggles. But when we surrender to life's natural course, we find that things tend to unfold with far less effort and far greater ease. This flow is not always comfortable. In fact, sometimes it's precisely when we're out of our depths, when things seem to be falling apart, that life's flow reveals its deepest wisdom. When we let go of our need to control every outcome, we create space for the unexpected, for the new, for things to emerge that we may never have imagined. It is often in the moments when we are most uncertain, when our plans are disrupted, that we experience the greatest growth and transformation. The key is learning to trust this process, to trust that life, even in its messiness, is moving us towards something meaningful. Just as a river doesn't question its path, we too can find peace by yielding to the flow of life. We can allow ourselves to be carried without the need to paddle against the current, trusting that we are exactly where we need to be, even if we don't yet understand why. Life's flow isn't something to conquer, it's something to join, something to move with, not against. And in that surrender, in that openness, we find a deeper sense of connection to ourselves and the world around us.